On today's show, we'll dive into the 2025 NBA draft for the first time on the podcast, and I'm joined by Brian Schroeder for part one of a two-part conversation, and all of that is coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1793 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Thursday here in September. And today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. And now through September 22nd, all customers at FanDuel can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Also want to encourage you at the top of the podcast to make us your first listen here at Locked On Hawks each and every day. Check us out and subscribe across the board. All your favorite platforms, Apple, Spotify, etc. We're also on YouTube. Please like this video as you are watching it. And also please subscribe on that video platform. It's going to be a part one on this podcast, and part two is also available in the same podcast feed right now. I'll be joined in a second by Brian Schroeder, who's been a frequent guest of this podcast for a long time, NBA draft analyst du jour. And we'll be doing our first deep dive into the 2025 NBA draft. I should say at the top of the show, as a reminder to Hawks fans, this is a general conversation about the NBA draft, but it's very relevant to the Hawks because Atlanta does not have their own pick in 2025. Famously traded that pick to San Antonio as part of the DeJounte Murray trade, but they did refill the coffers in the draft as part of the outgoing DeJounte Murray trade. And Atlanta has at least one pick in the first round of 2025. It's the Lakers pick, which is unprotected, which could be as high as number 1, could be as low as number 30. We'll see, but they have that pick no matter what happens, unless they were to trade it in some other deal. And then the Hawks also might have another pick, and that's the pick from the Sacramento Kings, which could be anywhere from 13 to 30. If it's in the top 12, the Kings will retain it for one more year and roll it over. But we covered that sort of nonstop for the last several months. But as a reminder, no Hawks' own pick in this draft, but they do have at least one pick and might have two. So plenty to look forward to when it comes to 2025 and beyond. All right, please subscribe to the podcast, and we'll dive right now into part one with myself and Brian Schroeder. I'm joined by a frequent guest of this podcast to talk about the NBA draft here in late summer, early fall. I don't know where we are right now. It's September. How are you, Brian?
It's fall.
It is fall.
September. My allergies are going crazy, so it's fall.
Yeah, it's post Labor Day, so it's fall. That's the rule, I guess, in some corners. And you and I talk about the draft a lot on this podcast, but it's that time of year where it's the dead zone. There's a whole lot going on. People are preparing a little bit for college basketball season. Of course, the NBA season's on the horizon. We're recording this 3.5 weeks before media day, so we're getting closer and closer. But this is actually, I would say, in contrast to last year's draft, this one is being hyped up quite a bit. And that means that it's time to do a little bit of a look ahead on the 2025 class. In typical fashion, how would you compare this class to last class? Obviously, it's very different.
I wouldn't even try to compare them. It's big. I mean, the big issue with last year's class is I think I mentioned a lot of time. It just didn't have star depth at all, and that's a big difference this year. Where it's this class, I will say, the only real weakness is that I don't really see a lot of the returning class is it's fine, which is a difference. But the last year had such a poor high school class. That was the thing. The high school seniors incoming were just not stars. There's just nobody who looked like a superstar, really. Even with guys like Collier being well regarded, even then I was I think I came on this pod last year and said he was he maxed out as a Chauncey Billups type, which is very generously a superstar. That's the about the lowest tier you can get, Kyle Lowry superstar. This year's almost the inverse of that, where it's just chock full of guys who look like real building blocks. The depth is the other issue. I don't know what it really is, but we won't until we really get into the college. I have guys I like as returners statistically, but they may not play. They may be hurt. That's really hard to gauge from this perspective.
For sure. And that's, something we talked about a lot last year, the whole cycle, especially once the Hawks got the number 1 overall pick, which of course they were lucky to have in the lottery and all those things. But it was a class that no matter kind of how, there was kind of a dividing line of people that thought it was kind of a normal class after a certain point, or others just hated the class altogether. But everyone agreed there was not the top end in last year's draft. I'll ask this question because you probably know I'm going to ask it. How many guys in this draft right now? I know, and obviously, where you're at, if it's 5 that would have gone on number 1.
I think so personally.
Yeah, so that's the obvious layout. Just to say what sort of the what we're looking at here compared to last year.
You'll notice, and this is something you kind of notice in the media coverage about last year that wasn't centered on Bronny, was that it's like the focus was on how good the international class was. You know, how good, including like you guys like Ron Holland and Gonzalez, but including Risa Shea, Saloon, Sarr, how remarkable it was that it was all these non-college guys at the top. And that's the truth is it was maybe slightly above average international class. The college class was so bad, and they're not going to go on TV and be like, "Folks, this draft sucks." Like that's not what you'd say on a draft show because it could be wrong. Like it could be a better draft than we anticipate, and like B, that's just not how you would host a television show. Like you wouldn't, unless you're Vince McMahon and you're going to try and actively drive people away from your product. Generally, you don't go on and say like, "Folks, this is bad. Tonight's going to be. We have a terrible show for you tonight."
That's not how it works, generally speaking. And also, it's also harder to talk about international players if you don't watch. As well as I do, a lot of people who, especially like get tasked to these coverage roles on like draft broadcasts, don't watch a lot of non-college basketball, even if they watch college basketball. So it's like kind of a difficult situation to talk about, even for fans. Like, I will give grace. Like, it's harder to watch non-college basketball players if you're like a more than casual basketball fan. It's just actively harder to watch tape of guys who are not in college.
I would say it's become easier to find the outlets for it's not
agreed.
It's less passive. You can't just turn on the TV and watch. Like you could still turn on and just watch TV, like on a Saturday morning and just watch CBS watch your college basketball coverage. It's something you have to
that's really what I mean.
Out. Yeah.
It's like honestly, Trae Young's a great example of this. Put it back to the Hawks a little bit. Trae was like the absolute other side of this, where Trae was getting covered like he was he was getting the Trae Young tracker was happening every night and on ESPN. That probably won't happen ever again in college basketball. Maybe it will for Cooper Flagg this year. We'll get into that in a second. But I just think that it's a more active choice you have to make, and it's a more prospect-only choice. Like there are allegiances to college basketball teams that don't exist for people here. Like no one's rooting for whatever prospect's team. They don't care about that. So like you're not going to get your if you're a college basketball fan, like for instance, I'm a Michigan fan, I'm not going to turn on a game that's not involving anyone that I care about in college basketball unless it's about a prospect. I'm not just watching like random, second division European games unless there's a prospect that I want to watch. It's just it's more active.
Yeah, that's the idea. Yeah.
Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, and you might have heard me talk about FanDuel many times in the past before, and FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Well, this time around, something a little bit different from the folks at FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. And then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game with the folks at YouTube and YouTube TV. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can get to cancel anytime you want. When you get there, you will also know that FanDuel Sportsbook and the app there is so easy to use. They have all stuff you're looking for in sports betting space, from over-unders to point spreads to money lines, player props, future bets, and so much more. The FanDuel app is also safe and it's secure. They cover the entire range of sports as well. That includes the NBA, of course, as you listen to this podcast. WNBA, NFL season's now upon us. College football is already up and running. MLB is still going. Golf, tennis, soccer, auto racing, boxing, MMA, and so much more. And now is an awesome time to sign up with the folks at the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. One more time, the place to go is FanDuel.com and check out America's #1 sportsbook. So, do you want to just start with Cooper Flagg and get it over with? Because he's the biggest name by far. He's already very famous before he gets to college. He'll be even more so when he gets to college. He's a real prospect, of course, but he's going to Duke. That's not going to damp things down at the very least. He had lots of storylines this summer where he looked good with the select team as a 17-year-old playing against grown stars. So I'll get out of the way here. He's the guy I've seen the most, which is a low bar. I will always admit at this early stage, I've not watched a lot of these guys yet, but I know you have. I'll get out of the way. How good is Cooper Flagg? Is he clear number one? All those questions that I'm going to ask.
Yeah, sorry, he's 16 right now. I had to make sure of that. His birthday is in December.
That can't be true. Is that no. He's got to be 17. There's no way he's 16, right? As a freshman in college, that can't be true.
His birthday's I'm sorry. He's about to turn 18. Yeah, so he's 17 now.
Right. I was like, wow.
I was thinking 2016. No.
It's all good.
Yeah, he's Jaden Quayton's is 16 right now. That's
but Flagg was so he was playing at select on the select team against
17.
As a 17-year-old and like looking good by all accounts, which is not a small thing, I would say.
Yeah, he turned 17 last December. His birthday is in 2006, December 2006. So,
which is a wild thing to. As an old person, I can't believe that that's a birthday of someone who's going to be in the draft. But anyway,
we're getting to the point now where the Boozers were born after I graduated high school, which is
I'm older than you, so that's already where we are for me. But
that one's upsetting. It was upsetting enough when like Zion was born in 2003, and I was like, oh, I know what I was doing then. I was like an adult. I was an adult, but I was like making plans to drive a car. He was born.
Right.
Like it's upsetting. Don't like thinking about it.
That's right. So Flagg, this is actually it's a separate conversation, but it's also interesting. He's getting like college player of the year buzz that you don't often see. I don't know if that's going to happen or not because it's just hard for a 17-year-old, 18-year-old to be the best college basketball player in the country. That's a different distinction,
especially with a lot of we still have some COVID guys hanging around.
Yeah, it's the college basketball is a lot older than it was like when, for instance, when Zion was the player of the year. That was the most recent time where a freshman was like clearly the best player in the country kind of thing. So separate discussions there, but I mean, is he going to, how do you even compare? It's not like, is he going to be a guy that lives up to the hype that he's getting right now, which is a very broad statement on purpose, but is he that level of prospect or do you have more reservations than some might have?
I don't have that many reservations. I guess the question is going to be, I think the way he scores, like his ability as an offensive player is going to be, he may be like a 16 a game guy, which I think some people may not see as like elite scoring. Because I don't know if that's his strength. Also, that Duke team's going to have a lot of other scoring, which will be an issue.
Yeah.
But I don't see why he won't be like, as just a guy who makes winning plays and makes differences in basketball games, he's absolutely going to be that guy. Like he already is. He's one of the most like just consistently, I don't know if dominance is the right word, consistently effective college or high school basketball players of the last 5 years. He just every game he does everything really well. That's really his calling card. It's not even the Keegan Murray thing where he's like a 3 out of 5 at everything. He's a legit like impact player in almost every way, which is really, really difficult to really quantify in a lot of ways, I think.
Yeah, I was going to ask you because I have this fear. Again, I've only seen him a handful of times, but what you just laid out is perfect in that he is billed by people that do this as like checks all the boxes, like really, really good at a lot of different things. You know, the defense is potentially special by all accounts, I think, from what I've heard anyway, but you can weigh on that. But also, I do have this fear that he's not necessarily viewed as like a primary offensively right now. And that means that certain corners of basketball land will not embrace him right away. Usually that's not I mean, that's what happens usually with guys that are not like bad guys. You know what I mean? I'm not even sure how else to put it, but like he's not going to be like taking 20 shots a game for Duke this year. It's not going to happen.
More than likely not. No, because he'll also, to his credit, will understand that that's not the best way to win a lot of these games. When he's got,
he's apparently like a fantastic like winner. Basically, is a fair statement?
He's a super winner.
So, what do you like most about him? We're talking about how like what? Give me your scouting report of like the things that you actually, because we won't do this for everybody that we talk about, but he's obviously.
I think his best skill right now, and it's a weird one, is his weak side shot blocking. He's just a monster. As like a recovery defender, he's not just like a guy who just recovers to get steals, to deflect passes, just play team defense in a way that looks like a 10-year veteran. It's incredible how good his defense is, and he's like a really high level athlete. And Like, he can shoot, and I don't know. It's just it's hard. It's kind of hard to pick out, but I think that's his like number one attribute is just the defensive intelligence and general just instinct. And the instinct might be better than intelligence. He just has it. He has that thing that Anthony Davis has, where he just sees things way before they happen. I don't know how else to describe it. He just has a savant level understanding of basketball.
Which I know that appeals to you, knowing the way you think about basketball. Also to me, I guess I'll make the devil's advocate question to you. He's not 6'11", you know what I mean? Like, he's not going to be like, is there any concern that not that he's not going to be a good defender, but like how much of an impact that can be for a guy who's 6'8" instead of 6'11", 7 feet? Like, he's not going to be playing center. It doesn't seem like.
No, he's more than likely not going to be playing a lot of center, but I think he can do it on occasion. I don't know. I feel like that's less 10, 15 years ago. I think you would have had teams would be pretty determined that their defensive anchor is going to be their center. And it's like, that is Giannis. I guess he is a center in a lot of ways, but he's that team's defensive anchor. He kind of just runs around and does everything. Draymond, I mean, is a center nominally, but I'm just thinking of guys who've been like the core defensive piece on a team, on a championship team.
Right.
It's less than you need the Mutombo types less and less than you used to, I feel like. And also with even though we are seeing a little bit of a push away from small ball, even then, like, I'm trying to think of how to say this. Even then, you still have times where Paul Reed plays center or something, like a guy who's roughly the same size as
a lot of teams. Center. Yeah, a lot of teams have their small ball option. It may not be one they go to every game, but even if they have traditional centers, they kind of have their looks where they go a little bit smaller. You just have to do that. I just when
if you do that, it'll be very easy to match Flagg up against that at 5 and dominate.
And I can already hear people that probably haven't seen him play are just like, okay, the first thing you named is this guy's defense, and he's 6'8", and he's not a wing. Like, it's just interesting, like, broad. And I see what you see when I've seen him. Like, it's been really, really impressive. But I don't know if that's going to be an immediate translation, but maybe that'll be the case. What's your favorite offensive trait of his?
Just his ability to finish. Like, he's got that. Again, I don't want Kevin Love kind of like just the ability to see the angle and finish layups. He's just an excellent. He's a very good passer. The jumper is almost been like behind everything else for a while, but I feel like it's starting to come along lately. It's kind of a weird release. Like, his release is a little high, maybe, which isn't bad, but it's just a little odd. But like I don't really see how he's not a 15 to 16 a game guy in college, and if he's definitely sort of, I will say that he can have the Cade Cunningham problem a little bit sometimes, where he will decide really early on that it's not going to be a game where he takes 30 shots, and then sometimes it turns out that they needed you to take 30 shots tonight, and it kind of takes him a while to rev up into that. I don't know if that makes sense if you watch a lot of Cade, but he does that sometimes. He'll defer to a fault a little bit, like he'll be trying too hard to get teammates involved, and like, it's not that he's turning down shots, but it's like sometimes the possession needs to be you coming down the floor and shooting. Like, we don't need any other possessions. It's an interesting. It's not an issue a lot of primary guys have, which is why I'm not sure he is that immediately. But like,
right,
it's maybe something if he's going to be. I mean, the comparison I've always used is Chris Webber. Kirilenko is one you hear a lot. That was kind of a problem both those guys had. Was there were nights where Chris Webber just didn't shoot, and there were nights when he took 40. And like,
I wonder if the Kirilenko thing is, well, I actually don't wonder. I know the Kirilenko thing is because Cooper Flagg's white.
It is, I think he is. I think it is still a reasonable comparison of, like, because Kirilenko for a defensive wing like a Sean Marion type.
Yeah, I mean, defensively, I see it defensively. I do see it defensively. I think that's a little bit limiting. He was a good offensive player, but
Kirilenko handled the ball a lot more than like Sean Marion did. Like peak Suns Sean Marion, or like Bo Outlaw, or any of these like sort of hybrid like defensive weapon types guys did. So I think that's really the separator for Kirilenko. I think he's straight up a 4, which is where the Weber thing comes from for me.
The Weber, yeah. I was thinking. Actually, I've not heard you. We have talked about this. I haven't heard you say that. And again, I've only seen him play a handful of times. That I think I like that. I'm not going to marry myself to it in September, but I think I like that comparison. And obviously, I watched a lot of Weber in my life for obvious reasons. Interesting player though, because like, there's nobody like Weber right now. Like, I can't think of a guy who's like Weber right now in the modern NBA. I mean, maybe I'm sure there are guys that have little things, but you know what I mean. There's not like a good
Banchero, like
maybe, but like he's way more of a like modern offensively. Like he does a lot more. Like, not that Weber didn't do this sometimes in Sacramento too, but he's more of a perimeter player than Weber was. I feel like still, Paolo is. Yeah, I mean, not to go down that rabbit hole too much, but that's an interesting player. If you think he's a 4.
He's one of the only guys I could think of. I was doing this a while back. I was thinking of guys who were legitimate hubs on both sides who weren't centers.
That's like, why I asked the question earlier. I didn't really ask
Bill
very
Walton
well. But
and Kareem are obvious. Like the other guys were hubs.
Yeah.
Even Russell to an extent. Wilt and Shaq was a hub. I mean, the triangle offense doesn't really have a hub. That's sort of the design, but he was the core piece of the early Lakers runs. And then obviously he was the hub of their defense. I mean, Embiid is kind of a hub. Jokic is, in his way, a hub on both sides. It's not hard to find for a center, but for non-centers, Jordan was not. That was the key. That was the reason Jordan was a good defender. Was he was not the primary decision maker on defense. He was not. He was the free safety. He roamed. He didn't have to guard anybody. That was the reason he was so effective. I mean, he was a very good defender, but that was why he had such crazy steal numbers. He was allowed to sort of freelance and make his own decisions, and that's by definition not a hub.
It's interesting package, and again, I'm not trying to downplay it already. I do genuinely wonder how people are going to receive.
There's going to need to be some. He's going to be one of the guys who you can't just walk in and compare him to somebody. It's sort of its own archetype, which is going to take some time for people to get used to. Which is historically the last 5 or 6 years has been the kind of player that I think has had the most pushback. Luka Doncic got a lot of pushback. Cade kind of did, although that draft wasn't really good enough. I mean, Wembanyama obviously did. Len Thompson did. I think, guys who don't fit an obvious NBA type of like, I had to think for a while, even on my archetype thing, which is 12? I have 12 archetypes instead of the 5 positions. I still had to think for a second, like, is he a power wing? Is he a true wing? Like, what is he? And I settled on power wing because I think his strength and speed are like his best attributes. And the fact that he's built like current Gordon Hayward, not prospect Gordon Hayward. Like he is built. That's kind of where the Weber thing comes from too. Weber looked like a bodybuilder when he was at Michigan. He looked like a freak.
And he might be, and Flagg might be an inch or two shorter than that, but with where the modern league is going, that's also fine.
I think Weber was 6'9.5", 6'10".
Yeah, well, so maybe an inch. That's fine. And also, the power forward position has changed a lot. We won't do that whole thing, but like it's not like it used to be where most teams had a guy that was a typical.
It's not the Otis Thorpe.
No.
Anymore.
Tyrone Hill is not walking through that door, as they say.
Yeah.
We can go to other guys. Yeah, we can go to other guys if you want to.
Yeah, Flagg is just a weird. He's just the growth he's played at, the level of competition he's faced and dominated for the last 3 years. I think if he was in the next draft class, which is originally what he was in, he reclassified, which is why I was confused about his age for a second. It is him and Cam Boozer and Darren Peterson. There's enough of a thing there. I think for now, he's still just a tier above most of these guys, just as far as like I said, if he really is like some sort of unholy combination of Giannis, Kirilenko, Chris Webber, and like maybe, Bosh. I don't know. He's just like he's like Rasheed Wallace plus. I don't know what else he would be. He'd be a completely unprecedented player, and he would be the number one. He will be the main building block on any team he goes to, save one, which is the Spurs, which would be ungodly if that happened.
Well, I was going to ask you. We can, and after this we can.
It could happen. It could happen.
I know how you track this stuff. acknowledging that he's not played college and your real evaluation won't be in for another 9 or 10 months.
Well, we'll see. It's possible. Did they play in the Champions Classic this year? It's possible he does a Zion and has like 35 in the first game.
That's fair. Yeah. But so right now, before we play the college minute, how high is he on your last 10-year list or whatever? Do you know? Do you have an idea? Obviously, Wemby's Wemby's a different thing in general.
I would say the main group, like the biggest can't miss group, is some order of let's just say since I'm doing it, so 2018, Wembanyama, Luka Doncic, Zion is like the can't miss number one. I don't know if he's there, but he's probably above like Jaren, Chet, Cade Cunningham, LaMelo, and Edwards. I think he might be above that group.
So that's kind of what I thought you were going to say. We haven't talked about this at all, so I was guessing. But based on the hype, not from you, but from everyone in general, and he fits what you like, which I knew that going in. I'm not surprised.
About him, I think he kind of fits what everybody likes, honestly.
Well, that too. But you know what I mean. I know about you, like the way the type of guys that you like. He kind of fits it, especially defensively and the way he feels the game and all those things. And so I mean, that's high praise in itself. It's high praise to have him fourth on that list, basically behind.
I think
Wemby.
Fourth tentatively. I'll say if the usage is really up there and he's putting up like real scoring numbers and like high usage, he'll be in that top group. If he's not, he'll probably slide in the second group. But that's a second group full of number one picks. So like,
right, and that's obviously not a huge knock on him. So we can go to other guys now. That was the longest we'll go to anybody, I'm sure. But that was for a reason. I knew we were gonna do that. Do you have a clear number two, or is it a group of guys beyond?
It's a group. It's a group. I have Ace Bailey there for now. There are
things
going to
about Rutgers. Everybody might even know that.
Arius Ace Bailey is his name. There are things about him. He's the most likely guy to get the pushback, get the I might call it the Brandon Miller honorary. Well, why can't he be number one?
Yeah,
he couldn't be number one because Victor Wembanyama exists. But the kind of it's not always. I don't want to say it's in bad faith because I don't think that it is, but it's just sort of people. Part of it is I think people just like rating this stuff, and like when they had a guy like Wembanyama, it was like, no, that guy goes number one. Like,
well, that was the only class that I can remember where there was not even a half cycle of. Are we sure about this one guy?
I still saw.
Did you really see it? I don't think I really ever saw it. At least for people that I care.
To be honest, I think it was more college bias than.
Maybe that was what it was.
So it was like, well, Wembanyama's not doing this in the SEC, and it's like not doing what? Shooting 6 of 18 at the rim.
Wemby's not doing this on a Tuesday in Starkville. I can tell you that right now. No.
And then
okay.
So there's the other obvious reason Brandon Miller should have gone number one. That came up a little later. That might be why you didn't see a lot of it, because I think by the time that the draft was really like a big topic, Brandon Miller had his, we'll say, off-court issue.
Yeah, that happened too. But
at that point,
I genuinely just missed it. I felt like Wemby was like the only time that I can ever remember this didn't happen. Maybe it did. So maybe that speaks to your point. Like if there really was at least a mini cycle against Wemby number one, it's going to happen to everyone every year. It's just what's going to happen. It's just
the strongest one. The one that upset me the most personally was not even the Ja over Zion. I understood the concept of that. It was I think RJ Barrett's the best of all three of them. Well, then that did happen, and also RJ wasn't he number one coming into the year too, and it was kind of sticky in some corners. He was the number one high school player.
Yeah, so that's probably what it says.
Any doubts I had, they played their preseason Canada games, and I saw 45 seconds of Zion. I was like, oh, okay.
No, I vividly remember the night of the Champions Classic, and every draft person was like, all right, we're done here. It's like one half in a way that you don't often see for people that are like trying to be responsible. They're like, nope, we're not going to do this anymore. So okay, back to Ace Bailey, who's at Rutgers. By the way, he and Dylan Harper are playing together, who's also a top prospect, top 5-ish guy in this class. They're going to
Rutgers,
college together at Rutgers. So that's an interesting team that you would not necessarily associate. I think just for people, start right now kind of manually putting this on your radar to watch Rutgers basketball in a way that you probably haven't in your entire life.
Prepare yourself for 68, 58 games. If they're coming to you.
They were really good a couple years ago with that really defensive, grinded out team. Anyway,
if you like the Tony Allen era Grizzlies, you will probably enjoy Rutgers. Like they just play really physically. It's a fun.
I will say it's very odd to have 2 top 5 prospects at Rutgers.
Yes.
Not only because it's Rutgers, because that's part of it, but because of, like you just said, the style they play.
Yeah.
The Big Ten of it all. Like the Big Ten doesn't usually have those kind of prospects, and they're on the same team together. Like it's going to be fascinating. I know this is all different, and it's weird.
What I wanted to get to with Ace, I forgot to say, he's the most likely name you'll hear as like a counter to Flagg, and he is probably the most, I would say, of the top, definitely the top group. He's the most. I'm gonna say this charitably. Cooper. He's the biggest. He's the most Cam Reddish build of the whole group.
I mean, 6'8" wing, like the guy that you were picturing in your head when you were talking
3-level scorer. Yeah,
exactly. Score first, 6'8", and look, I like him from what I've seen.
I like him more than I liked Reddish or Brandon Miller or any of those kind of guys at this stage. Like, I definitely think he's physically more talented than those guys. I mean, Miller's a good athlete, but like Cam Reddish was not a good athlete. Still is not.
Yeah,
but like, Bailey has real size. I have a feeling he weighs more than 200. I don't think I've looked at Rutgers roster yet. I don't know if I have his wingspan. But he just looks like a guy. I can't imagine he doesn't go in the top 5, even if he disappoints relatively, barring injury. Just because he looks like that, he's going to walk into a gym and look like.
Are you ready for the Ace Bailey Rutgers listing? I have it up in front of me right now.
Mm-hmm.
They have him at 6'10", 200 pounds.
At only 200.
6'10" and only 200 is the listing. By the way, he's from McEachern High School, Cobb County's own.
He's another guy. It's kind of hard to talk about him in depth because he's just a 6'8" scoring wing. He's going to get all the comps you think, all the Paul George comps, and like he's one of those kind of guys. He'll probably be very good. I have him too now because I think it's more that it's true among peers. Like the rest of the top 5 guys, like kind of all the same level. I think he's just the most. The NBA archetype is easiest, and he's the one the NBA is going to like the most for sure. I'm very
right, and also it's about projectability to where, like, even if you are not in love with the archetype, that player, if it works on some level, like if it works to the way that you would think, like if he's not Justin Edwards or one of those guys who just like flames out quickly.
Justin Edwards, by the way, at this point last year, I would not have guessed he would be this bad, but he was not in my. I don't think he was in my lottery.
I knew you didn't like him, but he's the name because he was up in the top 5s that people had last year at this time, and those things do happen. So like I don't want to say that the smart money would be on one of these guys doing that, but like occasionally or pretty regularly, I would say one of the top guys kind of just doesn't do it. Mm-hmm. Like it's just what happens.
Had a tendency to do that. I may or may not be working on something like that. Just kind of charting how much more frequently 5 stars flame out than they used to.
Yeah, 5 stars, or even like the super 5 stars too, like the guys who are supposed to be the top 4 or 5 guys in the class, who are a little bit different in some respects. Anyway. Okay, that is all for part 1 with myself and Brian talking about the 2025 NBA Draft. Part 2 should be available in this same podcast feed right now. So go ahead and listen to that part whenever you get to it. And really, you can do it right now. I would recommend that at the highest level to continue this conversation. Please subscribe to the podcast on all of your favorite podcast platforms. That includes Apple and Spotify and Overcast. We're also on YouTube. Please like this video as you are watching it, and please subscribe to the show on that platform. Also, please follow us on Twitter/X at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there at BT Rowland. You can also find my non-podcast work at patreon.com/BT Rowland. One more time, part 2 is available right now in the same podcast feed. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you all next time.